Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Beyond Times Square webinar today. We are here to give you a luxury traveler's guide to Washington, D.C. And we are going to start with a short video. This is a 2-minute video, and we hope that you will enjoy this. We are excited to now be introducing you to our first of two presenters today. I am pleased to be introducing you to Carole Peck with Beyond Times Square. So Carole, over to you.
Thank you, Lee. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carole Peck, and I'm the Marketing and Product Development Coordinator here at Beyond Times Square. Thank you for joining me for today's webinar. I am really super excited about today's presentation as we have a very special guest joining us, and that is Karen Pullman-Miller, who just happens to be our top DC destination expert and tour guide, which she has been doing for 13 years. Karen is an affiliate member of the Guild of Professional Tour Guides of Washington, D.C., as well as a Guild Certified Master Guide and the 2017 Jill Blakeman Awardee for Outstanding Service to the Tour Guiding Profession. And we get the pleasure to speak with Karen this afternoon about all the fabulous experiences available in D.C. Now, Karen and her team of expert local and professional tour guides have been taking care of our guests here at Beyond Times Square for 6 years now, and she's going to tell you what your clients can expect on some of the most popular experiences she offers. So without further ado, let's turn this over to Karen to talk about our fabulous walking tour lineup. The floor is all yours, Karen.
Hello, everyone. So my guides and I are more happy to be taking your clients around Washington, D.C. There are several really good tours that are offered, including the Treasures of America tour, where your guests choose which of the Smithsonian museums or National Gallery of Art they would like to visit, and our expert guides are going to take the guests around and highlight areas that they would be interested in at whichever museums they choose to visit. We also have a couple of options in terms of monuments and memorials tour. There is a half-day tour, which can be either in the morning or the evening. And there's also a Monuments by Moonlight tour, which would be a little later in the day, and depending on the time of year, more or less moonlight. And there is also a full day tour. And on the full day tour, we can cover quite a bit more in terms of the monuments in Washington, D.C. The Lincoln, the Vietnam Veterans, the Korean War Memorial, World War II, Martin Luther King, Franklin Roosevelt, Thomas Jefferson, just to name a few. And then we also have our Circle of Power tour. And this one includes Capitol Hill, so the U.S. Capitol building, the Library of Congress, and the Supreme Court building. And then also a exterior visit to the White House for photo opportunities. So any of these tours can be customized. The guides will usually talk with the guests and make sure that their interests and their things that they're into. So, for example, Civil War history or World War II history, depending on whether they had a family member or a special interest in any of those. So the tours can be very much customized for everyone. So speaking of the U.S. Capitol on our Circle of Power tour, the U.S. Capitol has an interior tour that can be booked. Depending on the time of year, we need to be booking this further out. So our busy time is definitely in the spring months, so March through about mid-June. And if your guests can book the Capitol tours through us sooner rather than later, most other times of the year we can have a little more leeway at a little closer in booking. But for example, right now, these next several weeks, it's difficult to get a last minute Capitol tour, but it can still be done. So for the White House tours, if your guests would like to visit the interior of the White House, that is something that they are going to have to reserve through their congressperson. Usually the guests can go online to their congressperson's website and look for the reserving a tour button that you can usually push. So that is kind of the highlights of the types of tours that we offer in Washington, D.C.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you for touching on the fact about the Capitol and about the White House, because I know our advisors get a lot of those questions from their clients, and I know that my destination experts here get a lot of them as well. So it's always good to have that type of information available when people are visiting Washington, D.C., because it's a very popular request, obviously, to visit the White House or to visit the Capitol building. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I know, especially now that we had a little bit of a standstill there during the COVID years. So I'm sure there's quite a backlog of people that have been trying to get in now. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about what's new in DC this year, Karen. Can you tell us what might be new and upcoming in the city?
Well, one of the things that's really exciting, and I'm glad we have this slide up, at the African American History and Culture Museum of the Smithsonian's, they have just opened an exciting new temporary exhibit. It is called Afrofuturism. And it has some really fabulous artifacts in there. Two of my favorite artifacts are the Black Panther suit that Chadwick Boseman wore. And I've seen it up close, and it's not what you think when you see it on the screen. So it's really exciting to see that. And then the other thing that I thought most fascinating in that was Nicole Nichols' red mini dress that she wore as Lieutenant Uhura in the original Star Trek series. So both of those are just some of the items that I found exciting in that exhibit. So in terms of what's a little new in Washington right now is the fact that during the pandemic years, many of our sites kind of did a bit of a reset, and there are required tickets to enter more and more sites. And this is where Beyond Times Square can help your guests, because they're experts at getting tickets for any of the sites they need to go in and visit.
Well, thank you so much, Karen. That was a great overview, and I love that that we happen to have this slide up and that you were talking about this particular museum. And I know Black Panther was a huge hit at the box office this year, so I know a lot of people will be interested in seeing something like that. And you know, there are just so you guys are aware as advisors, there's always going to be new stuff coming out that you're probably going to see if you're on any type of newsletter. But just because they're not necessarily part of our BTSQ portfolio of tours right now, that can always change in the future. And we're always looking for suggestions too. If you get a lot of requests from your clients about what they want to see in our destinations, and that's not just DC, of course, please pass them on, because our destination experts will pass them on to our product development team, and we can look into them and see if especially if it's something that you're getting a lot of requests for. So in addition to what's new, I'm sure you have a list of top attractions, Karen, that you recommend when visitors to your city or participants in your tours ask you, as well as some hidden gems and off the beaten path ideas. Are there some that you can share with us that maybe you would show them on one of our many walking tours that we offer through you?
Well, there are all sorts of symbolism items that are hidden within the various monuments and memorials. So, for example, most visitors don't even realize this, but there is some graffiti that is actually engraved in an official part of the World War II memorial. It's quite difficult to find because you have to look down a set of stairs over the door to the water feature pump room. So this is Kilroy, and he's hidden kind of in plain sight, but not everyone would find that on their own. So this is the sort of thing that our expert guides are going to be able to talk about and to take the guests directly to see. Other things that would be like hidden gems is within the Smithsonian Museum of American History. Up on the 3rd floor west, they just opened the brand new entertainment exhibit. And within that are various artifacts that are really popular with guests, such as Judy Garland's ruby slippers in The Wizard of Oz. And my guides would be able to just, take a guest straight to that if that's what they really wanted to see, rather than wandering around the entire museum looking for it on their own. So just a couple of things that having a guide along would really help you get to quicker and really focus your visit to see what, again, what the guest's interests are in particular.
And I love that. And it's funny that you mentioned the ruby slippers, because my husband and I were actually in DC a couple of years ago before I even started with Beyond Times Square, and we went to the Smithsonian, and I'm like, I need to find the ruby slippers, and I literally did walk around looking for them. So you're absolutely 100% right, pointing out that when you have your own personal guide, especially with Beyond Times Square, everything is customized and personalized to what your clients want. Our destination experts will take what you're telling them, what your clients' interests are, and they will take that information and they will take it to our tour guides such as Karen and say, this is what they want to see on the tour. And it saves a lot of running around and a lot of wasted time of them not seeing stuff that they're really not that interested in. So that's some really cool stuff right there. And in fact, the World War II Memorial, you know, the next time I'm in the city, I'm going to absolutely head over there and try to find that, because I did not know about that little hidden gem right there. So thank you for those, Karen. I want to talk a little bit now about some of our other tours that we offer. In addition to these fabulous walking tours that Karen offers, we do have some other great options for your clients that I'd like to share a little bit about. So first up, we have some family-friendly options, and these would include things like our deluxe private DC monuments and memorials pedicab tour. And let me tell you that this is a super fun way to see the tours, to tour the monuments and the memorials, because you're letting somebody else do the pedaling while you sit back and just take it all in. We also have what we call our DC by Land and Sea private experience that gives you a chance to get up close and personal to the sights of DC, first via your own pedal power, and then followed by a spin on a private sport boat. And I have to interject here that a few of us from Beyond Times Square did have an opportunity to participate in the bike and the sport boat adventure, and we absolutely loved it. Pedaling instead of walking or even driving is such a cool way to see the sights, which just so happened to be the cherry blossoms when we were there. We were there to see the cherry blossoms. And then that boat tour, Captain Denny and his crew that run these tours are just the best. Such a fun tour, a unique perspective of the monuments and the memorials from the water. And if you noticed in our opening video, there was a shot of a plane going overhead. We actually shot that when we were out in the boat. The captains have a way of getting you pretty much close to the runway, actually. You're right there by the runway. And so as the planes are coming in, they're going over your head. And I've just, ever since I was a little kid, that's always amazed me. So I kind of made him stay there for probably longer than he wanted to, but just a really unique tour and a unique way to see the monuments and memorials. Your clients can opt to do just one of those as well. So we have a private sport boat adventure on the Potomac that they could do separately. They don't have to do both tours in one day. And we actually offer 2 different bike tours that they could do. Both are monuments, but one's during the day and one's at night. And let me tell you, thanks to the fact that DC's monuments and memorials take on this whole new look come sundown, I highly recommend a night tour. And bonus, there's usually less foot traffic and there's usually less car traffic. So it's easier to get around on the bike, let's put it that way. Now let's talk about some food tours. If you do not associate DC as being a foodie destination, you really should, because the food scene is phenomenal. And for that particular reason, it's home to 2 of our most popular food tours in our whole catalog of tours throughout all of our destinations. So first you have the U Street food tasting private walking tour. Now this is an area where you can get eclectic cuisine thanks to a lot of locally owned restaurants, and that well-known Ben's Chili Bowl that a lot of people have heard of, that's located on U Street. But it's also not just great food, it's also a great place to check out the street art in DC as well. Then we have a Georgetown food tasting private walking tour. And because Georgetown is home to people of all different ethnicities and religions, Georgetown is a place to go for incredible gastronomy experiences. You know, everything from handmade donuts to mouth-watering street foods. And plus, while your clients are noshing, they're also going to get introduced to some history of DC's oldest neighborhood while they're on this particular food tour. And speaking of Georgetown, let's give Karen the floor again to talk about what makes Georgetown a must-see for your clients, and also to give you some insight into our Georgetown and Embassy Row private tour that Karen also handles for us. So Karen, you can take it away.
So yeah, the Georgetown tour is always a really popular one. Georgetown is the oldest neighborhood section of Washington, D.C. Now, the town itself predates the federal city being built around it. So you have some of the oldest homes on view there, including the Old Stone House, which is the oldest structure within Washington, D.C. But there are also some beautiful estates that are located within Georgetown. that have just amazing gardens that almost any time of year are well worth a visit. These include Tudor House, which was built by one of Martha Washington's granddaughters and her husband. And then you have the lovely Dumbarton Oaks estate located in Georgetown. And then walking around the neighborhoods, there are quite a few homes that either John Kennedy, Jacqueline Bouvier, and then John and Jackie Kennedy together lived in. Most of them before the presidency, but there is a home that Jackie moved to after the president's assassination. So she lived back in Georgetown, her favorite place. So the walking part of the tour, we do take you along the waterfront. There's a beautiful new waterfront park, and it has fountains, and it's just a lovely view of the Potomac River there. And then part of that Georgetown tour is a driving of Embassy. Now that's part of Massachusetts Avenue up in the northwest section. Kind of starts from Upper Georgetown and takes you back down to the business and monument areas where most of the hotels that your guests are going to be staying in are located. And they're going to be passing by a lot of embassies that are just located along the stretch of Massachusetts Avenue. But let's not forget one thing that many people are interested in, and that is the exorcist steps. This photo actually highlights where it's kind of hidden. If you look in the middle right, you see a brick building with a clock tower. So the embassy, the exorcist steps run alongside that building. And the home that was featured in the movie is actually right at the top of those stairs. So I know that is a popular thing for people to do, is either, just see where they are, or if they're really adventurous, to walk those stairs. They're quite long.
I love that, and I bet you get a lot of requests on your tours for that.
We certainly do.
Yeah, any kind of movie site always seems appealing to people, and myself included. And honestly, I have to just say, I've only personally spent an evening in Georgetown, and it was having dinner down by the Washington Harbor. And I am super excited to go back and check out the rest of the town myself, Karen, and see those exorcist steps, because that kind of stuff is always interesting to me as well. So thank you for that great overview on Georgetown. Let's talk a little bit now about the Can't Miss Fireworks display in our capital, right? So this year, Beyond Times Square has a brand new offering that your clients are going to love. It is our 4th of July DC fireworks dinner cruise with a walking tour in the morning. So basically what we've done is we've combined 2 fabulous experiences into one big holiday celebration. So what happens is your clients get to choose from one of our fabulous walking tours in the morning with Karen and her team. And then in the evening, they spend an unforgettable night on the water, complete with that spectacular firework display. And Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, but the fireworks that they will see in that display, that's the fireworks, the big ones from the National Mall displays, correct?
That is absolutely correct. From the water, there's just an amazing view of the show, and you don't have to worry about the security and being crowded on the National Mall with literally thousands of people watching those beautiful fireworks.
And that sounds like the way to do it to me, absolutely. Instead of being in the crowd, being on a ship that is crowd controlled. And the ship that we're using, the Odyssey, is absolutely stunning. You guys can see a picture of it down in the corner. It's one of the coolest ships I've ever seen. And that being said, too, just as long as we're talking about 4th of July and fireworks and seeing them from the water, I want you guys to know that we also are doing a fireworks dinner cruise and walking tour in New York City as well. So you can see them from the Hudson River up there. But both cities have fabulous fireworks display, and we're really excited about these 2 offerings. And I'm also need to point out that we have such limited availability. So if you know that you have clients going to DC or even to New York City and want to do something like this for the 4th of July, contact us ASAP, because these are going to go quick, because it is such a fabulous opportunity and a really cool, you know, almost like a bucket list way of seeing the fireworks from a destination. So after, oh, I know, spring and summer. That's what we're going to talk about. We're already into summer, so let's talk about, it's currently spring. We've been talking about summer now with the 4th of July, and that's going to be here before you know it. Karen, do you have any kind of spring or summer travel tips, that was a tongue twister, that you can share with us, like maybe what clients can expect as far as the weather in DC, or the best attire for touring, or what not to leave behind, that type of thing?
Yeah, well, spring in particular can be quite interesting here because we've had kind of record heat this past week, and we're going to have some again later this week. But the last couple of days, it's gotten quite cool, almost with a freeze warning at night. So I, highly recommend that your guests pack clothes that are going to be, in layers. So a light jacket or a sweater for starting out early in the morning, but then with something a little more comfortable so they can, take off those layers as the days get warmer and warmer. So in the spring, quite often you start off with your tour and it's going to be about 50 degrees or so. But by the time you finish your tour, it can be up in the upper 70s or 80s even. So quite a variable, about 20-degree difference quite often, and just in those 4 hours that you're touring, if you're doing a half-day tour. And of course, let's not forget comfortable walking shoes. This is really a must for getting around the Washington monuments and memorials. What many people don't realize is just the amount of distance that there is between places. Like, take a look at this picture. In the foreground, you have the World War II Memorial, and in the background, there is the Lincoln Memorial, and you see the reflecting pool. Now, those do look like they are really close together, but in reality, it's about a 10-minute walk between those two. So it's, I think, about a half a mile between the two memorials. And so many people just don't realize how much walking they're going to be able to do. So comfortable, broken-in walking shoes are going to be really important. And, for the most part, DC is a pretty casual town. Your guests might want to pack a nicer outfit if they're going to go out to dinner in the evening. But if you're doing a walking tour, casual, comfortable clothes, and like I said, dressed in layers, that is what's going to get you through. Now, in the summertime, it's still a good idea to have a light jacket along with you, or a sweater or something, even when it's really hot out, especially if you're going to go into any of the buildings on tour. They're air conditioned, of course, and that transition from the really warm outside to the air conditioned inside, having like a little layer to put on you for that change to cooler temperatures is not a bad idea.
Absolutely.
So those are good tips for anyone just, coming and visiting.
Absolutely. And the layering thing is, it reminded me when we were there at the end of March, which is cherry blossom season, and we did the same thing. We all had on sweatshirts and jean jackets, and by the time our tour was ending a couple hours later, the 2 top layers were already off. So that's very good advice, Karen. Same thing with the walking. Like, looking at this picture, you're right. It looks like it's just a hop, skip, and a jump away. But I think that's one of the things that really amazed me when I visited the city for the first time, that how, the distance between everything that's, you think the National Mall, you think it's one small area, you think all of the monuments are going to be boom, boom, boom. And it's a lot of walking. It's a great walking city, though. I love walking, a lot of green space, and just a totally different experience from going to, say, like New York City, that type of thing. Just a totally different landscaping there. But after we have seen all of DC, we also have opportunities for your clients to see some other areas outside of DC. So before we go, I want to touch on the fact that we offer some great day trips for your clients, and one of the most popular is our George Washington's Mount Vernon private sightseeing tour, which Mount Vernon, that's one of the nation's most beloved historic sites, home of our first president, of course, and it's just about 35 minutes or so outside of DC. So a little bit over an hour round trip, probably, with traffic. But Karen, I'd like you to jump in here and tell us a little bit more about this experience, as well as another popular day trip that you and I talked about that we aren't currently offering, but we're hoping to bring in as an option, hopefully within the second quarter. And it's to a town that I fell in love with when I first visited, which was Annapolis. So if you could speak about these two tours, that would be great.
And so Mount Vernon is one of the popular tours to do outside of Washington, D.C. proper. So it's a beautiful drive from D.C. Along the George Washington Parkway. And we do pass through historic Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, and then continue along the Parkway. And then we end up at George Washington's Mount Vernon. Now, Mount Vernon has this beautiful estate. It's about 900 acres. And the jewel of the estate, of course, is the actual historic home that George Washington inherited and then expanded. So what we are seeing is Mount Vernon as it was in about 1799, which was the year of his death. The estate tour is a separate timing from the entrance to the estate, but we definitely take care of that, and we walk our guests all around the estate itself. So there are many, many parts of the estate that are you could wander, all day and maybe even miss part of that. For example, down along the waterfront, Mount Vernon has the Pioneer Farm, and this shows what farming would have been like back in George Washington's time. And they have costumed interpreters throughout the estate. So we have farm workers down on the Pioneer Farm, and up near the house itself, there are going to be various costumed interpreters. Some of which play actual characters that worked and lived at Mount Vernon. And then if you're in for a real treat, you can go and visit and speak with Lady Washington. So she's a fabulous person to listen to. And if your guests are from anywhere that existed in the colonial time, she is going to be able to talk to them all about their hometown. So that helps, personalize it some more. If you happen to have a family with children, there are animals throughout the estate. Most of them are heritage breeds, and our guides can tell your guests about them and make sure that they see those animals where they're kept throughout the estate. And of course, not to be missed is the tomb of General and Lady Washington. So we always take our guests down to pay their respects and to maybe take a photo of the two sarcophagi side by side. And then on the way out, there's a fabulous building with both a museum with Washington artifacts, and then there's also the Education Center, which teaches people of all ages about George Washington's life. And sprinkled throughout that area are also more artifacts. So for example, one of the swords that was owned by George Washington. There are 5 swords in existence, and one of them is on display within that education center. And if you do have younger guests, family members, there are a few videos and hand-on experience that is always a lot of fun, and the guides can direct your guest to that. Now let's move on to Annapolis. So Annapolis is about an hour drive from Washington, DC. It is the state capital of Maryland, and the state capitol building is historic. And again, I'm going to tie this to George Washington, but one of the places you can visit within the state capitol building is the room in which George Washington resigned his commission after the Revolutionary War is over. And of course, the United States Naval Academy is located in Annapolis, Maryland, and we can take your guests there and tour them around the Naval Academy campus. And of course, depending on the time of year, whether it's school in session, your guests are going to see the Naval Academy cadets walking around and getting to their classes. In the city of Annapolis, Maryland itself, quite old, and there are still lots of historic buildings and all these different streets with quaint shops and restaurants. And then they have an area along the waterfront called the City Dock. So just plenty to do on a day trip out to Annapolis.
Thank you, Karen. And with that day trip, so typically how long would the guests be at Mount Vernon for their, I know it's like an hour in the car, a little bit maybe more depending on traffic, but once they get to Mount Vernon, what's the time frame that they have?
There's usually about 3.5 hours at the state from the time we arrive and go in. So about 3.5 hours on the estate itself.
Fabulous. And would that be Annapolis? Is that a longer, since it's a full day, or?
Yeah, Annapolis is going to be more of a full day. I need to really talk about the timing on that one, but this is probably going to be about an 8-hour day. Might be a little shorter, but we do have about 2 hours worth of round trip driving.
Right. Yeah. You always have to figure in the transportation, right?
Yes. And then, there is traffic. So
of course.
You need to take that into account.
And again, guys, Annapolis right now isn't in our catalog, but we are definitely hoping to get it added. That's why I wanted to Karen to speak to that for a little bit. And that actually is the end of our presentation for today. I want to thank you all for attending our product learning session with Beyond Times Square, and a huge thank you to Karen for being here and sharing all of her DC knowledge and tips and insights with us. Karen, it was fabulous having you here with us today, and we hope you'll come back again, and hopefully you can stay in case there's any questions that are going to be directed towards you, which we are going to now see what Lee has available for us.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. Yes, so we do have some questions. Of course, the number one question is always about the cherry blossoms. So I think we touched on that, but anything else you can share with us about best when to go?
So cherry blossoms are historically, they have been around April 1st. But I'll be honest with you, over the last 5 years, it seems to be moving into March. So I would plan on the last week in March to go. If your guests are at all flexible, about 6 weeks out, the National Park Service will start their countdown to the cherry blossoms, and they will give their first best estimate. And that that will help you pinpoint exactly when to come. But the last week in March is a pretty good bet these days.
Okay, good. Thank you. How do you purchase train tickets to get around the city?
So Metro cards can be purchased at any metro station, and it's a good idea to purchase a pay $10 at first. $2 is going to be the cost of the Metro card itself, and then there'll be $8 of fare on there. One of the things that's interesting about this Metro card is that's going to help you get around Washington, DC, on all sorts of different types of transportation. One of the things that's quite popular, and we do use this sometimes as part of a memorials walking tour, especially if our guests are starting to get a bit tired, we kind of cheat and do a shortcut, which is using the circulator bus that makes its way around the National Mall, the museums, the Capitol, and up to Union Station. So we can kind of hop on that and save a little bit of walking time.
Okay. And so could you also access Georgetown?
There is a circulator bus that goes to Georgetown. It goes between the DuPont Circle Metro Station and the Roslyn, Virginia Metro Station. So there's a circulator bus, as well, of course, as the city metro buses.
All right, thank you. There was some interest in the biking tours, and we're wondering if helmets are required.
Helmets are required, and they are a part of the tour. So when you go on our bike tours, you get the helmet, and you also get bottled water with actually a souvenir water bottle that you can take home.
All right.
Yes, safety first, definitely helmets.
Right. Very good, very good. So let me see. There was a question, Carole, this is probably for you, or maybe Joel. How does a travel agency register with you? Is it necessary to pre-register in order to do business with you?
Actually, it's really quite easy. You can call, you can email, you can go right onto our website and submit a form. And once you start talking with one of our destination experts, they will actually enter your IATA number into the system, and then you're in there with us. So if maybe you've had somebody within your agency that's booked before, if that IATA number is already in there, then you're all set up. But yes, we will register you via your IATA.
Okay, great. Thank you. Karen, another question for you. One of our advisors said that he read that you shouldn't take your backpacks with you when you're going out and touring and being a tourist and whatnot. Would you agree with that?
Actually, I would. I hadn't mentioned it, but the U.S. Capitol has some really strong prohibited item list, and that does include any food, any water, or even things like sprayable sunscreen. So you do have to be prepared for that. But a really heavy backpack, if you don't need it, it's just going to weigh you down, especially coming now into spring and summer. A small bag that lets you put some sunscreen and your bottle of water in that, and maybe some snacks for the walking around time, especially if you've got younger children. But the lighter you can go as you're walking around, you're gonna really appreciate that.
Okay, so probably a fanny backpack would be okay, but just not the full on, it sounds like.
Yeah, or small to medium size handbag for the ladies.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Carole, are these various tours that you've discussed today available on the Beyond Times Square website?
They most certainly are. And we're also going to have a brochure that will be sent out with all of them in it as well. And just a heads up too, we are in the process. We're going to be revamping and adding some new tours to our DC product list, which I will be certain to obviously give another webinar once that all comes along. We just finished with our New York City product, revamping everything. Got some great new experiences there. So now we're going to spend the second quarter doing that with DC, and we're really excited about it. Until then, what is in our brochures and on our website is still available. And like I said, once we get the new catalog available, I'll be doing a webinar on it, and they'll all be up on our website and in our new brochures, which are always going to be available via our travel agent. We do have a travel agent portal on our site that you can access those materials.
All right, very good. Well, let's see, maybe one more question and then we'll wrap it up. What would you say would be the best tour for people for 4 nights? Do you have anything on your website that would be a good guideline for that?
Well, currently we have our 3-day multi-day overview of Washington, DC, which would take up 3 of those. And of course, they're fully customizable. And it's funny that you should ask too, because we are getting more into multi-day tours. That's what we just did in New York. So we're planning on doing that in DC as well. But if you look at our 3-day tour, that will hit all the major highlights that most people want to see. And then, of course, we can tack other stuff on that 4th day to make it a complete 4-day experience for them. That's not a problem.
All right. That's great. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you both so much. I am going to turn it back over to you, Carole, for closing comments.
All right, sure. Just a reminder, I know I just said this, but all of the attendees of the webinar will receive an early access to our all season travel in Washington, DC brochure. And that's going to be both branded and white labeled. And that'll be in a follow-up email that will be sent to you early next week. And you can share that white labeled one directly with your clients. And of course, for travel bookings and inquiries, you can call us at 212-564-1001. You can email us at sales@btsq.com, or you can go right onto our website and fill out the information form. We're accessible pretty much anyway. Also on social media, don't forget to follow us on social media as well. Thank you again for everybody that joined us today, and thank you, Karen, for all of your fabulous insight into Washington, DC. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and my thanks as well. And we'll get that follow-up email out to you. I know we're preparing a few extra materials, so we'll make sure that we have those available for you as well before we send it out. And as I said at the beginning, if you need the replay sooner than we get the follow-up out to you, just send me a little email and you just respond back to the webinar email and I will get the link to the replay sooner. All right, so with that, we will wish you all a great day and conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.